Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host. Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live and proudly, as always, from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. We have a lot to get to this morning, and actually a viewer's comment after yesterday's program is going to tie that in beautifully. We're going to get to that in a moment. Coming up later in the 7 o'clock hour, we'll be talking with Ed White. He's running for New York State Supreme Court in the 7th Judicial District. We're going to find out about that, what that race looks like. That's coming up in the 7 o'clock hour. When we'll take a moment later on in the program to list exactly who will be on, as we are just a week away, 1 week away from Election Day. Pretty exciting. How are you feeling this morning with a week left to go? I would understand this viewer's frustration. This came after yesterday's broadcast, saying that they forgot to mention it during the show. But earlier yesterday morning, one of the Democrat networks, I forget which one, made it sound like Trump spewed racist remarks, and it alarmed me. Yes, at the Madison Square Garden rally is what they're suggesting. However, it was in fact the Joker who made the remarks and not Trump. The Democrats must be extremely desperate to be so misleading. Who knows how many empty heads sucked that right up into their small minds and ran with it. Well, here's the problem. And this is going to be, just prepare, the Madison Square Garden rally. And I know many of you watched it and are somewhat shocked by what is being said about it now. The talking point in the media is going to be all about that rally. They're trying to compare it to January 6th somehow. They're trying to compare it to the Nazi rally in the 30s. You saw the workings of that early on, and now that is the media and Democrat politician talking point. We're going to take a look at that, what is being said, because that is, for lack of a better word, and I know this term is overused, that is their October surprise. They're realizing that the polling isn't looking good. They're realizing that Harris has not really made her case to the voters. So they are trying to make a case for her, essentially, that she isn't Trump, and Trump is bad. I mean, this should come as no surprise. I just didn't know which avenue they were going to go down. It reminds me so much because they said backlash brewing. Well, that just means the media is making a story out of it. This happened so often during the Trump administration with these quote-unquote scandals that they'd always come up with that were debunked, but it would create and control the media narrative for about a week and a half. Then they move on to some other scandals. So they create the scandal and say, uh-oh, Trump has a scandal. We're going to talk about it. First off, 46,472,709 mail-in and early in-person voting has been cast nationally. So nearly a little over 46 million votes have been cast. I've talked to many viewers, many people on the street that said they have early voted or are going to early vote. I am in that latter category. I am going to early vote. I just have not yet had an opportunity to, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are. I know some people are maybe shying away from it. I understand that point too. But I would ask, how are you going to vote? Early or in person on Election Day? And also, how are you feeling with 1 week out until Election Day? Now, did you watch the interview that the former president gave with Joe Rogan? I did actually have an opportunity to catch it. It was interesting. It was long. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just, I mean, as someone who's done interviews for a very long time, 3 hours is a very, very long interview. The fact that they both had such good conversation, I think it was totaling out 3 hours, give or take, let's say. Well, what we're learning this morning is podcaster Joe Rogan's highly watched interview with President Donald Trump has racked up more than 35 million views. But fans searching for it on YouTube may have had a hard time finding it, leading to accusations of censorship against a Google-owned site. And there is a trend for this. There is history for this, why people would be concerned. A search on YouTube using the terms Joe Rogan Trump or Joe Rogan Donald Trump did not bring up Friday's 3 hour, yes, there it is, it was 3 hour sit down at the top of the list. The Spotify interview also was notably absent from YouTube's trending page on Monday. Instead, users were offered results of videos from traditional media outlets like The Hill, MSNBC, and Fox News, and their coverage of the interview. instead of the actual interview itself. An unrelated clip from Saturday Night Live even topped the results ahead of Rogan's interview. The difficulty in finding the video has led many Trump fans to accuse Google of censorship ahead of next week's election, which again would come as no surprise. Censorship, you see them grasping on to painting this rally, and they're really hoping you didn't watch the rally. Now, forget about the alleged comedian at the beginning. I wasn't familiar with him, and I'll be honest, I missed that. I did catch most of the rally itself, but having looked at the list of speakers, there were definitely some that I missed. There were some that I was very glad that I was able to catch. Not expecting to tune that in for how many hours that rally ended up being, something like 6 hours. I did not watch it for the full 6 hours. But we're going to be talking about that in depth because just in preparation of this next week and throwing anything to the wall to see what sticks because, it's the final days. And they have to make sure that Trump does not return to the White House. But I'll continue. YouTube does not return the link to the full Joe Rogan Trump interview, no matter how hard I try to search for it, said one user on X. There's no sensible explanation for this. And if it's deliberate, Google is overtly interfering with the elections. Google has not responded to a request for comment from the New York Post. The search giant has faced similar accusations of spitting out negative articles about Trump as the main query results when seeking election coverage. When users searched YouTube for Joe Rogan, the interview did pop up near the top of the results page. Viewers have left a flood of comments underneath the interview accusing YouTube of foul play. One user questioned why a search for the interview on Google populated anti-Trump results, which seems to be a common trend. The user included a screenshot of a story at the top of the Google results page from the Arizona Republic titled, "Opinion, Donald Trump's Joe Rogan interview was a brain-rotted waste of 3 hours." Now, as one user asked, how does the Arizona Republic rocket to the top of search results for Joe Rogan Trump interview, I wonder? Even Musk responding, saying, wow. Fans have also accused Google of censoring the video when it was initially posted. The video was unlisted when it was first uploaded to YouTube, so it did not appear in any search results. Rogan clarified that the unlisted video was just a glitch with Spotify, not a result of blacklisting. Quote, "There is no issue with YouTube censoring the Trump episode," Rogan posted. "It was just supposed to go live on Spotify and YouTube at the same time, and there was a glitch in Spotify's upload system, and so we delisted the YouTube link until it was fixed. It should be fine now." He also responded because originally it was reported that Kamala Harris was seeking to do an interview with Joe Rogan. Well, I guess that was the case, but she had so many, like is typical, had so many requests that he had to turn it down. He tweeted out to clarify why Trump was on and not Harris. "For the record, the Harris campaign has not passed on doing the podcast," Rogan wrote yesterday. Or wrote, I guess this morning, actually. Wow. We're right on top of things here. "They offered a date for Tuesday, but I would have had to travel to her, and they only wanted to do an hour. I strongly feel the best way to do it is in studio in Austin. My sincere wish is to just have a nice conversation and get to know her as a human being. I really hope we can make it happen." 1 hour. Well, listen, 3 hours is remarkable. Now, granted, I used to do a 3-hour radio show, but it's a little bit different than just a 3-hour sit-down interview. I don't envy either of them, only because that can be very taxing. But it was a good interview, and if you did happen to catch it, I'd love to hear your opinion. I am not one that watches Joe Rogan on a regular basis, but I know he has huge fandom, and that's why he was so sought out after to conduct these interviews. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the campaigns here. Your thoughts on the latest quote-unquote backlash about the Madison Square Garden rally. Again, first of all, let's just ignore, I guess, the fact that that's not even the same Madison Square Garden from the Nazi rally in the 30s. Not even in the same building. Of course, it's been redone. The way they are jumping through hoops and twisting themselves up into a pretzel to make this a news story is remarkable. Now, what are my thoughts about the comedian, you may ask? I thought it was wrong-headed. I think you really take some chances when you have an insult comic, which, again, I didn't know that's who that was. I'm not really familiar with him, but an insult comic be a part of your last 2 weeks, week and a half before the election. You can never be quite sure what's going to happen. But that's what they're focusing on, as if that was the whole rally, and as if it was Trump, to that viewer's comment, as if it was Trump making those comments. I don't know what you would see in his speech. I mean, it was a very typical Trump rally, except for it happened to be in Madison Square Garden, and that gives them the opportunity to make those horrific comparisons, to say just horrific things about Trump and his family. We are going to talk about that. I do have a couple things here about the Walz-Harris campaign. I guess Walz was receiving some criticism because, remember, he is the coach. He said that AOC, he did an interview with AOC, that she could, quote, run a mean pick six, meaning when a defender returns an interception for a touchdown. Walz wrote, and we both know when you take the time to drop a playbook, you're going to use it. Well, the post was later deleted, but critics quickly jumped on the mistake. J.D. Vance noted the difference between a pick six and offensive plays. You don't run a pick six, you run the West Coast offense or the spread offense. It made me realize that even though they say Tim Walz was a football coach, I think I know more about football than Tim Walz. And it's appropriate because I think my running mate, Donald J. Trump, knows more about working at McDonald's than Kamala Harris does. Very funny. AOC can run a mean pick six, and I can call an audible on a play, and they wonder why they can't get men to vote for this ticket. Did you see, and that's from one ex-user, did you see, speaking of that, Kamala Harris and Gretchen Whitmer got hit with an open mic, hot mic, and made some concessions, not knowing to everybody about what's going on in the race. We're going to talk about that as well. A couple things here about Coach Walz. Yeah, we got a couple things here on Walz here when we come back. I don't want to focus too much on that because we have so much to talk about with the Madison Square Garden rally. We do have a couple of New York State issues. Senator Tom O'Mara and Assemblyman Phil Palmisano and others, and I'll read the full list to you here, put out an open letter regarding the vote on Proposition 1, the amendment to the New York State Constitution, which will be on the back of your ballot, whether you go in early voting or whether you go in day of. They are encouraging you to vote no. And we'll tell you exactly why a little bit later on in the program. As I said, Ed White will be our guest. He's running for New York State Supreme Court in the 7th Judicial District. That's in the 7 o'clock hour. But right now we have to take our first break. 1 week out from Election Day. Stay with us here on Frankly Speaking.
The World Series on WYDC TV Big Fox is brought to you by ServU Credit Union.
If you or one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer.
How do I know if I have a case?
Call 844-292-6222 and consult with one of our attorneys to find out if the products you used are part of the lawsuit. Your eligibility will also depend on how often you use these hair products and your specific cancer diagnosis. If you regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. Call 844-292-6222.
How much will it cost to talk to an attorney?
There is no fee unless we win your case. Call 844-292-6222 for your free case review.
During high school, I hung with the wrong crowd and I never graduated.
I helped Santiago in many different ways, like all fathers do, because he always wanted to go to college.
I felt a little embarrassed to come back to school, but eventually, once I came here, I knew that it's for a bigger goal.
He was very dedicated, hardworking. He connected with his teachers. He connected with other students. That was one of the key reasons why he was able to keep forging ahead.
It was amazing to see him graduate. This was one thing that meant so much to him, and of course, it meant so much to us too.
With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed. That support is everything.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Fox College Football Friday Friday and Big Noon Saturday kick off a whole new era of college football with new matchups, historic rivalries, and all of the Big 10, Big 12, and Mountain West action. This is the season we've all been waiting for. College football.
Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Tim Walz, according to the New York Post editorial board, is now a walking warning about Kamala Harris's decision-making. In the latest humiliation for Tim Walz, the campaign geniuses had him face off against AOC in a game of Madden. And the former barista, meaning AOC, held the championship high school football coach to a 0-0 tie. Maybe not a surprise, since he was actually a volunteer assistant coach, since someone with his DUI record can't be a paid coach. This follows last week when Walz knocked Elon Musk, quote, Elon's on that stage jumping around, skipping like a dips on these things. Someone a little upset at the joy, because that's their word, the joy that the nerd tech genius and self-made gazillionaire brings to the Trump campaign. Then again, Walz also recently slapped his counterpart, J.D. Vance, for his time as a venture capitalist, even as Tim admitted he doesn't know what a venture capitalist does. Not exactly a brag for someone who wants to be a heartbeat away from the presidency. And don't get us started on Walz's Elmer Fudd-esque I'm going hunting stunt, not to mention the lying about his National Guard rank, his China trips, etc., or his epic frog in the headlights loss to Vance in the VP debate. All this matters most because choosing her running mate was Kamala Harris's first big decision. Once Joe Biden basically handed her the nomination so that she did not have to have a primary. She had clearly better options, as we've mentioned numerous times on this program, whatever you think about him. Tactically, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro would have been a much better choice because he can walk, talk, and chew gum at the same time, and might well have helped her carry that must-win state. And if you look at the polling right now, they may even lose Tim Walz's own state of Minnesota. It could be a scenario where, much like Paul Ryan, to be fair, if you remember, Paul Ryan did not carry his state for then candidate Mitt Romney. Maybe it wasn't fear of picking a Jewish man and appeasing the anti-Israel left that led her to go with Walz. Perhaps he just felt like a kindred spirit. Either way, Tim now stands as one more warning sign about Harris's rotten decision-making, and that comes out, as I mentioned, that he could end up losing his home state. They could, I should say. That's a takeaway from the new polling of Minnesota that shows Governor Tim Walz's ticket may be on the verge of an improbable outcome in the vice president's pick home state, with the first potential loss for Democrats there since 1972 in Richard Nixon's landslide, over the doomed George McGovern. Roughly 24 hours after the former assistant football coach came under fire for a lot of things in these last couple days. I'm not going to go through the whole list. A Minnesota Post survey finds Walz and Kamala Harris in danger of a fatal interception in the land of 10,000 lakes. The poll of 1,734 likely voters, conducted by Embold Research between the 16th and 22nd of October, shows Harris and Walz barely ahead of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, 47.7% to 45.1%. And independents are breaking for Trump, 36% to 27%. The 2.6 point spread is a reduction from the September survey, which had them at least at 4.2%. As if the pollsters asked the vandals who painted walls as failed on the governor's mansion this month who they voted for. And then there's this, and I'm not going to get into it because it's not really a surprise. It's not really an October shock. But polls have razor-thin margins in the 7 states that'll swing the vote count in 1 week. And as of on cue, a narrative-shaping story emerges that may or may not be true, but lets us know how little swing state voters know about the man who could have ultimate proximity to the presidency. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz allegedly had a big secret romance with a Chinese communist official's daughter. With roughly a week before the election, Jenna Wang made the bombshell allegation she and the Democrat had a passionate liaison that started in 1989. And I'm not going to go into all the the juicy details, if you will. But there was even talk of one point of marriage and Wang's relocation to America. Timing is everything on a story like this, and this is a classic October surprise, a trick-or-treat bag that makes us wonder how, after Walz' many years in politics, the smoking gun materializes now. Yes, you always got to take these with a grain of salt. It's the same with some things they've been saying about Trump. Their October surprise, so now what we're seeing, and we're going to go into it in depth here on the program, is to paint this Madison Square Garden rally as akin to a Nazi rally. That is what they're running with, hoping to persuade undecided voters, if there are undecided voters. But Coach went to China a few months after the brutal subjugation of martyrs for freedom in Tiananmen Square, which begot mass arrests, a crackdown on media and protests, and the end of that period for Beijing. And he courts and sparks someone born into party loyalty, allegedly. She says Walz compelled her. Wow. Again, I don't want to go into all of that stuff. But what does this mean, if anything? Does it mean Walz was cultivated by someone who very easily could be an agent of foreign influence with blackmail material held on him until time to use it? I think it's reading too much into it. Can Democrats reverse this narrative, though, of Walz himself? That doesn't appear likely unless there are more October surprises to come. So you could do the research for that on yourself. It's the whole story and all its salacious details are on the internet at various websites. I just don't think that's a surprise or the shock that really moves the needle. But, we bring up the other quote-unquote October surprises from both parties. I wanted to be fair and balanced. We've got a couple things here about Harris and her last pitch to voters, some of the events she's been going to, some of the things she's been saying. We're going to talk about Donald Trump's Madison Square Garden rally. I have a New York State issue or two to get to because, again, I want you to hear directly. And we did on Friday of last week, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano expressed his concern about Proposition 1 and why he said that you should vote no. Well, we've got a little more detail on that. We are going to have Bobby Ann Cox on the program on Monday to dive in depth on it yet again. She was on the program a couple weeks ago, but I asked her to return just so we could have a little more time to discuss, because I think there are a lot of questions about Proposition 1, and if you look at the way they've worded it on the ballot, very misleading. So we're going to talk about it and give you a look at that. Also, since I have a second here, even though I'm running a little bit late, today on the program, as I said, Ed White running for New York State Supreme Court. Tomorrow, Stacey Romeo, who also is running for New York State Supreme Court in the 7th Judicial District. She's going to join us on tomorrow's show. Thursday, former congressman, current candidate for Assembly, and current chairman of the Steuben County Republican Committee, Joe Sempolinski, fan favorite. He'll be our guest on Thursday. On Friday, Matt Bizzetti. He's running for Chemung County Family Court Judge. That's in the 6 o'clock hour. In the 7 o'clock hour, we'll be talking to Matt McCarthy. He's running for Steuben County Court Judge and Steuben County Family Court Judge. We had his opponent on yesterday. Matt McCarthy is going to join us on Friday's edition of the program. And then, as I mentioned, Monday, right before Election Day, Bobby Ann Cox will join us. All right, let's take a short break. I'll get to some of your comments. We're going to dive into the Harris campaign, aside from Walz. And then we're going to get into the Trump campaign and all the issues of the day. So don't go anywhere. This is, Frankly Speaking, on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Have you been unable to work for over a year due to a mental or physical disability?
Were you recently denied Social Security disability benefits? Great news. You may be eligible for money, back pay, relief.
If you've been pre-qualified and diagnosed with a recognized condition that prohibits you from working, our lawyers can file a claim to get your disability benefit.
Call us today and find out more.
Call now, 844-617-0440.
Have you Serve You Credit Union is dropping their auto loan rates with the new buy or refi special. Right now, get an auto loan at 4.99% APR for 72 months. Whether you're buying a new vehicle or looking to refinance your current loan from another lender, ServU's low rates are available to all members, regardless of credit score. Apply online, over the phone, or in person, and drive off with confidence. ServU Credit Union, here to make your borrowing experience safe, easy, and affordable.
Isn't your wellness important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselson's Hot Tub. Hesselson's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselson's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselson's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselson's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
When we have the food we need, we are at our best. We push further. We rise higher. We unlock our full potential. When we are at our best, we have more to offer the world around us. When we have the food we need, we make our communities stronger. Together, we can help everyone get the food they need to thrive. Join the movement to end hunger at feedingamerica.org/actnow.
The Boss Security Roof Cam. Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Let's go to some viewer comments before we jump into Harris's campaign here. A viewer having a tough time finding the actual Joe Rogan Trump interview. I understand. I do believe there's a censorship, somewhat of a censorship involved there. I lucked out and it came up, but in hindsight, it came up not through Joe Rogan or the Joe Rogan Experience. It was a fan, I think, that recorded it. Because I was apprehensive at first. I thought it was going to be one of those reaction videos, or you sit there and you realize, oh, this isn't even the right interview, or whatever. So I did watch it. I just don't think it counted towards Joe Rogan's numbers necessarily, and I think it just was by pure dumb luck that it popped up on my YouTube. It wasn't because I'd searched it. But next, because I actually remember there was talks that they were going to record it Friday, but they weren't sure when they were going to release it. So that's why I thought I was kind of being tricked on, it was either Friday or Saturday when I actually saw it. Anyway, so I can understand you're having trouble, just like the people online calling out that what they're considering a bias towards the search on YouTube of Rogan and Trump. Okay, next up. This one got cut off, and that was my fault. My fault. Here we go. Kamala's leaving no stone unturned. She's in church on Sunday and sitting at a bar with Gretchen on Monday. She seems more natural at the bar. I don't know that. I mean, she was talking off the cuff with Gretchen Whitmer, not realizing there was a hot mic, which I don't understand how you know at that level. But I mean, I guess she's never really been at that level before, but at that level, you don't realize that someone's listening and watching nearly all times. We're going to talk about that in a moment as part of the overall picture of her campaign. Next up from a viewer, Frank, my wife and I went to vote Monday, and I have to tell you, we were a little apprehensive after voting on Election Day for over 50 years. And I've heard a lot of people apprehensive for a myriad of reasons, not just, they question accuracy, et cetera, but also, and I'm guilty of this. This is why I'm going out of my comfort zone and going early as well, because I just generally like that experience of voting on Election Day, having that be a part of the whole day. Of course, I haven't done this in a while, but go to remember when churches had it more often, Election Day dinners and these type of things. I just like that whole process. But I'm with you. I'm apprehensive, but I'm going to do it as well. I'll continue with what the viewer had to say. But it was excellent. The location at the library, this is the Corning Library, and the staff were wonderful, pleasant to deal with, and very efficient. It only took minutes. So for all your viewers out there that are apprehensive about early voting, they can forget about it. It is easy to do and quick. The only recommendation I would make is that the city make parking spots in the law available for voters to go in and out so that doesn't deter people from voting. Oh, that's a good point. That is kind of even on a non-voting time of year, that library parking lot can be a little bit sticky. It can be a little tough to find a spot. So I understand that, but I'm glad that you had a good experience. So again, I love hearing your stories if you went to early vote or if you want to tell me why you're not going to early vote. I'm not sure what day. I'm kind of moving around my schedule. This is obviously a busy time of year, trying to figure out exactly what the best day is so I can walk over and have a couple minutes to talk with the poll workers. And yes, it is going to be different, though, not having that experience of being there on Election Day. It's going to feel weird, to steal a phrase. Kamala Harris had to be told to keep her hands to herself during a tour of a semiconductor manufacturing facility in Michigan. Did you see this? Here is actually a harvested U-Rod. An employee at Hemlock Semiconductors in Saginaw informed Harris. As she approached the large piece of silicon covered in what appears to be plastic wrap, she said, "Can I touch it?" As she started to hover her hand over it, and the factory worker immediately, no nonsense, responded, "Do not touch it." Oh, so she kind of got knocked back a little bit. Said, "Do not? I'm glad I asked. Please do not touch any of the poly," the hard hat wearing employee added as Harris approached a plate of silicon crystal chunks. "Those are very sharp." And she observed, "Okay, and shiny." Yes, sharp and shiny. One Twitter user suggesting that was straight out of Veep, which I've never watched that show before. Trump's campaign saying she's totally helpless, like walking around with a 3-year-old. And then she was at a raucous Michigan rally, so spending time in Michigan. She pulled the plug on the crowd's energy during that rally yesterday after a bizarre request to her supporters. She said, quote, "We are all here because we are fighting for a democracy and for the right of people to be heard and seen. We're not about the enemy within. We know we are all in this together. That's what we are fighting for," Harris said. So the lines drew applause from the supporters, and in typical at a rally fashion, people started chanting Kamala, Kamala. Apparently eager to move her stump speech along, Harris deployed what many on social media called a cringe joke that abruptly shut down the cheers, which you don't want to shut down the cheers. That's got to be the best part of being involved in a rally. Harris then demanded to the crowd, "Now I want each of you to shout your own name. Do that." And the befuddled crowd went almost silent as the vice president laughed at the confusion she just created. "It's about all of us," she explained. Jason Miller with the Trump campaign said that it was classic Kamala. Her lack of connection with the audience is cringeworthy. This is not leadership. Several people compared Harris's rally request to the incompetent and cringeworthy behavior of the star of Veep. So I guess she's getting a lot of comparisons to Veep. Yeah, that's a weird way to stop. Just take the life out of the room. Let them chant your name for a little while. Keep that energy going. She was, as I mentioned, caught on a hot mic, which we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. We are going to, after this, just trying to give you all the updates and fit in as much as we possibly can in 2 hours, because we are going to be talking to Ed White as well. But there's so much to cover as we near Election Day. So many people having already voted. But obviously Election Day 1 week from today, clearly. So it's kind of an interesting time with all the news from both campaigns, but we have to focus extensively on the Madison Square Garden rally and the media's twist on this, the Democrat politicians' twist on this, trying to paint it as something it was not. But I would ask your opinion on that. What do you think of the new media narrative? Do you think it'll be effective? Obviously, the media is not focusing on anything that could hurt Kamala these last few days, but as you can only imagine, the next week will be completely focused on making sure Trump does not return to the White House, whatever that means, whatever kind of quote-unquote October surprise, whatever type of, in the instance of Joe Rogan, maybe making it more difficult to find some of the things that are positive for Trump, as we saw last election. In 2020, as the Hunter Biden laptop story was censored, et cetera, et cetera. We don't have to relitigate that. But so it comes as no surprise when we hear about these things about the Joe Rogan podcast, or you start to see the coverage. This is not a surprise. There will be a quote-unquote scandal of some sort every morning when you turn on the news. The scandal here is that there was a rally at Madison Square Garden. They're trying to suggest that what the one comedian said, if you watch the coverage, you would almost think Trump said it. It's very, very confusing. But what are your thoughts about him? I wasn't familiar with that comedian before, but I know that the media is laser-like focused on him now. So we'll talk about that and much more. But right now, I'm asking you to stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
Whether because of discomfort, lack of mobility, your lifestyle, or occupation, you sit inactively way too many hours a day. Introducing Ellipse, the premium quality automatic seated exerciser that strengthens legs, increases mobility, and boosts circulation without physical strain or impact.
It is so quiet that none of my coworkers even know I'm using it.
Strengthen and tone your legs, increase your mobility, flexibility, and balance. Plus, stimulate healthy circulation.
My joints feel better, my knees feel better, my back feels better. It makes me feel stronger too.
Perfect for home therapy. Whisper quiet to use while you work.
My circulation is moving, I'm burning calories, and it makes me feel energetic.
Call now and order Ellipse, the seated exerciser that strengthens legs, increases mobility, and boosts circulation. Call and get upgraded to the Deluxe Bundle. Get the faster motor or 5 miles of steps per hour, the step counter, the sport mat, and wireless remote. Call now.
When we have the food we need, we are at our best. We push further. We rise higher. We unlock our full potential. When we have the food we need, we make our communities stronger. Together, we can help everyone get the food they need to thrive. Join the movement to end hunger at feedingamerica.org/act now.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, it's haunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
The Boss Security Roof Cam. Visit Boss Security in Horseheads today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are moving fast this morning. So as I mentioned, Kamala Harris was caught on a hot mic with Gretchen Whitmer, admitting her campaign needs to help in appealing to male voters. I got to be careful here because there was quite a bit of cussing. Harris, who was sitting in a bar with Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, in Kalamazoo Saturday, when she seemed to have forgotten they were surrounded by microphones and cameras, according to the footage that has been posted to social media. Quote, "We need to move ground among men," Harris appeared to tell Whitmer over beers at the Track House Bar and Grill. The Democrat nominee then looks up and realizes that they are being recorded by cameras and microphones. Now, this is not shocking. It's just shocking that she didn't realize that she's going to be heard with just about everything she says, that you're not safe bellied up to the bar. If anything, that's when you maybe want to be a little playing things a little closer to the vest. But she didn't say anything that I think is surprising. We need to move ground among men. That's just what the polls have been saying. Oh, we have microphones in here listening to everything. I didn't realize that, Harris said. Okay, so now you tell us. You're running for president of the United States, for heaven's sakes. Whitmer jokes, "You'll bleep my," we'll say, cuss words out, right? "We just told all the family secrets," cuss word. Harris says, laughing. Many on social media theorized that the hot mic moment was staged as a corny joke, considering the governor and vice president were both wearing mics clipped onto their clothing and surrounded by boom mics, cameras, and reporters for a photo op. Yeah, it could very much be that, trying to be more personable, more likable, get that message out. People can relate to, oops, I said something I shouldn't have said. I don't know. It could have been a staged event to make her look more likable, more everyday man. Just something to keep in mind. You never know with politics. Even so, Harris's campaign does need to make up ground on grabbing male voters. The vice president lags behind former President Donald Trump significantly among men. Trump leads Harris 55-41 among male voters in the latest New York Times Siena College poll published less than 2 weeks before Election Day. Harris has a slightly narrower lead among the opposite sex. She takes 54% of female voters to Trump's 42%. It also revealed that the 2024 election is largely a toss-up. Harris and Trump each receive 48% support among likely voters, locking the candidates in a dead heat as early voting has already begun in many states. Yes, that's why, there could be many October surprises, many big stories coming out, but so many votes have already been cast. It's very interesting if you can move the needle. I know that they were, just to show you, it's not ideal to be a Democrat in some way, especially if you have a name. What I mean by that is if you look at someone like Taylor Swift, endorsing Biden-Harris back in 2020, making cookies, if I'm not mistaken. She made her endorsement. Well, then, as the election was heating up, as Biden had that coup against him and he's out and he gives a nod to Harris, they said all that Taylor Swift has done in the past means absolutely nothing unless she does something now for Harris. And it was kind of the wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Do you want to remain as popular as you have been? Do you want the coverage that you've been getting? And what was it, 2 days maybe later? She made that endorsement right after the presidential debate. And again, the endorsement was no surprise. It was just really more a matter of timing, which I think that timing was actually kind of not ideal, if I'm being honest, because that took some of the focus away from Harris's performance, and many Democrats believed, especially those in the media, that Harris did a good job because the bar was set so low with word salads and the like. Then you have that town hall the other day where the word salads came back out, and even David Axelrod was mad. But either way, we'll take a step back from that. The reason I say it's tough, because you can never quite do enough if you have a soapbox. And if you have money, you can't do enough. If you look at Jeff Bezos, he's getting criticism because the Washington Post isn't endorsing. We're going to talk about that for just a second, but isn't endorsing a candidate. This is the headline from New York Times. Bloomberg, meaning Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York City, after months of pressure, donates $50 million to help Harris. The former mayor of New York City is known for making political donations late in the campaign season. Democrats have been lobbying him to spend more. So imagine that. Even though you support Harris, and who knows how much he's given in the past, it was not enough. You have to, in months of a pressure campaign, you have to donate even more. When he realizes he wants to still be invited to those certain cocktail parties and still have certain friends, so he donates that $50 million to help Harris. That's what I'm saying. It's always difficult. The bar is always changing, always being set somewhere new, especially when it comes to celebrities. Now, I'm not saying Bloomberg's a celebrity by any means, but he's got money. The celebrity instance to me is fascinating, because if you remember the whole term silence is violence, if you don't come out and fully endorse the preferred candidate of the media and the elites, then it can really end your career. And you've seen this happen where certain celebrities, all of a sudden an old tweet was found where they didn't want that out. Kind of the pressure campaign. And look at it even with RFK Jr.'s wife, who is an actress. But it does not campaign with her husband, never has. Look what happened there, where some other actor said, if you haven't done enough to call out your own husband, this could cost you work. Because we know, and what was the joke that Jim Gaffigan made at the Al Smith dinner that was similar to that? That if he goes, I'm kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place, I'm paraphrasing, but if I'm kind, or if I'm nasty to Kamala Harris, it'll hurt my career. It'll hurt my popularity. And if I'm mean to Donald Trump, it'll help my popularity. And it's true. We know that. So Bloomberg, I know that's a long way around to tell you about this, but Bloomberg receiving months of pressure, has now donated, because he wants to stay in that cocktail party circuit, donates $50 million to help Harris. His contribution was made to Future Forward USA Action, the dark money vehicle of Future Forward, Ms. Harris's main super PAC. Mr. Bloomberg, who is 82 years old and has an estimated net worth of $105 billion, is the second largest disclosed individual donor to Democrats in this election cycle. Never has big money played a bigger role, because if you look at it, the next was in first place. So second place, Bloomberg. In first place, George Soros. So big money has never played such an important role. We know it's one of the reasons why Biden was ousted. Because the money dried up, and then the dam was unleashed of the money, and then the media could show that Harris had this supposed momentum because of that. So never has big money played such an important role in a presidential race to this level. All right, we got to take a short break. Keep those comments coming in. Keep those waves coming in. How are you feeling 1 week out before the election? Have you voted? Will you vote early, or will you vote on the day of the election? And anything else you want to talk about. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Frankly Speaking, here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
The World Series on WYDC TV Big Fox is brought to you by Servview Credit Union.
Hi, Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you out, because only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Assistant Smokey Bear, call me Papa Bear, because I'm grilling up dinner. Do you get it?
Yes, good job.
So, what should I do with all these coals?
Don't just toss them out. Put them in a metal container, because those embers can start a wildfire.
I understand. The stakes are high.
Ha, 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 ha.
See, Smokey thinks I'm funny.
Should be electric today. The crowd, the atmosphere, this is what makes it special.
Here we go. This is what we do. Sensational.
Big news.
The Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are nearly done with hour number one as we broadcast live with Frankly Speaking. Live from the Hesselson studio, with Frankly Speaking. All right. So I'd mentioned this just quickly. By the way, viewer saying, yesterday I was gladly able to stop the phone calling. Yes, I've heard from a lot of people, especially if you made a donation to a candidate early on, that the phone calls and texts have been nonstop. But I was gladly able to stop the phone calling by telling them immediately that I had already voted. She couldn't hang up fast enough. That's a good idea. I understand. I understand that it has been pretty rough for many out there, thinking it could actually hurt a candidate for depending on how much they end up messaging you. Well, U.S. Today has become the latest publication to snub Kamala Harris with a non-endorsement, much like the Teamsters. There's this new idea of just not endorsing. Jeff Bezos, his argument for Washington Post was, comes off looking at biased. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, and I meant to. I apologize with what he had to say. Here it is. The Washington Post will not be making an endorsement of a presidential candidate in this election, nor in any future presidential elections. We are returning to our roots of not endorsing presidential candidates. I don't really think this moves much, an endorsement by a newspaper anyway, but it has been kind of a tradition for so long, and it's a news story created by the news, which I always find quite tedious. But, it would be this outlet. But how do you end up coming off looking fair as a news outlet if you do make that endorsement? I've never quite understood that. And I know it comes in the opinion piece section of the newspaper, don't get me wrong, but it alienates so many people, no matter who you pick, at a time when newspapers are, I think it goes without saying, struggling. But USA Today has become the latest publication to not endorse Harris. Lark Marie Anton, a spokesperson for USA Today, confirmed to the Daily Beast that the publication has decided not to endorse either Harris or former President Donald Trump in the presidential election, noting that the publication believes, quote, America's future is decided locally. Now, this comes after a tradition in which they urged readers not to vote for Trump in 2016, went on to endorse Biden in 2020, even saying at the time that it unanimously supports the election of Joe Biden. So Anton said, why are we doing this? Because we believe America's future is decided locally, one race at a time. And with more than 200 publications across the nation, our public service is to provide readers with the facts that matter and the trusted information they need to make informed decisions. Now, as the Daily Beast noted, the USA Today has a circulation of 132,640 print subscribers and has millions of more readers online, adding that it was the flagship brand for over 200 local newspapers throughout the United States. Now, other publications such as the Los Angeles Times, which is the hometown newspaper of Harris, and the Washington Post have also recently announced that they would not be issuing an endorsement of a presidential candidate in this election. The LA Times revealed it would not be endorsing a presidential candidate despite having previously endorsed Biden, Obama, and Clinton. In an opinion piece, William Lewis, a publisher and chief executive officer of the Post, wrote that the publication would not be making an endorsement of a presidential candidate in this election or any future election. Now, the numbers are not good for the Washington Post. I don't know if you've, and I don't know, again, I just don't think how this is that important, but there is a time of boycotts where so many people, if you don't come out, going back to what I was saying about Bloomberg and saying about celebrities, if you don't come out full-throated and support the candidate of their choice, they will call for boycotts. And how much was it? I had it here, and now I missed it. They lost something like 200,000 subscribers instantly when they made that announcement that they would not be endorsing that, meaning the Washington Post. But again, that seems to me to be a group that's looking to boycott anyway, perhaps. Yes, here it is, finally. The Washington Post lost more than 200,000 subscribers in the first few days after news of the blocked Harris endorsement made the rounds. Two anonymous internal sources told NPR. For context, that's 8% of its total subscriber base. Post owner Jeff Bezos, as I mentioned, responded to the fallout. And the opinion by Jeff Bezos is, and he's got a good point, and I have more on this coming up, but the hard truth, Americans don't trust the news media. And that is coming from the owner of the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, saying, and he was referring to that Gallup poll that I've mentioned so often on this program, where people just don't trust the media. They actually trust somehow Congress more so than the media. He said, let me give an analogy. Voting machines must meet two requirements. They must count the vote accurately, and people must believe they count the vote accurately. The second requirement is distinct from and just as important as the first. Likewise with newspapers. We must be accurate, and we must be believed to be accurate. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but we are failing on the second requirement. Most people believe the media is biased. Anyone who doesn't see this is paying scant attention to reality, and those who fight reality lose. Reality is an undefeated champion. It would be easy to blame others for our long and continuing fall in credibility, and therefore decline in impact, but a victim mentality will not help. Complaining is not a strategy. We must work harder to control what we can control to increase our credibility. And there would be more outlets that would be very wise to heed his words here. Presidential endorsements do nothing to tip the scales of an election. No undecided voters in Pennsylvania are going to say, I'm going with newspaper A's endorsement. None. What presidential endorsements actually do is create a perception of bias, a perception of non-independence. Ending them is a principled decision, and it's the right one. Eugene Meyer, the publisher of Washington Post from 1933 to 1946, thought the same, and he was right. By itself, declining to endorse presidential candidates is not enough to move us very far up the trust scale, but it's a meaningful step in the right direction. I wish we had made the change earlier than we did, in a moment further from the election and the emotions around it. That was inadequate planning and not some internal or intentional strategy. I would also like to be clear that no quid pro quo of any kind is at work here. Neither campaign nor candidate was consulted or informed at any level or in any way about this decision. And he gave quite an interesting kind of look behind the scenes of, yes, the media is struggling to be trusted. So does that endorsement help? But that's enough on that. We got to take a break. Wrap up our number one. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
Have you heard? ServU Credit Union is dropping their auto loan rates with the new buy or refi special. Right now, get an auto loan at 4.99% APR for 72 months. Whether you're buying a new vehicle or looking to refinance your current loan from another lender, ServU's low rates are available to all members, regardless of credit score. Apply online, over the phone, or in person, and drive off with confidence. ServU Credit Union, here to make your borrowing experience safe, easy, and affordable.
Name something with a diamond in it.
Diamondback rattlesnake.
It's in the name. Name a low-calorie food you might make your edible underwear out of.
Salmon.
Watch it weeknights. Share it the next day.
Wild caught Norwegian teriyaki.
Share in the fun. Weeknights on Family Feud.
7 and 7:30 on Big Fox.
The Roof Camera brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We've got a lot to cover. Seems like we're just getting started. I know in the next hour we will be talking with Ed White, running for New York State Supreme Court. He'll be joining us right around 7:10 probably. Now, Tim Walz, the Democrat VP nominee, has tripled down on saying the election will be extremely tight. This was yesterday, saying the thing is going to be close. It's going to be a few votes per precinct, but the energy's out there. The Harris campaign has been reluctant to make bold predictions of victory, preferring to describe the race as close or tied. When we come back, we are going to talk about the Madison Square Garden rally. What were your thoughts as we see the coverage trying to make this a scandal? I guess it's more frustrating to watch, and it goes back to what Jeff Bezos was saying about the lack of trust in the media, because it was an example. If you didn't watch it, I can see how you'd be duped. But if you watched it, you could say, wait a minute, just like with inflation, just like with public safety, I'm seeing this with my own eyes, and yet you're telling me something completely different. But that's coming from some that watched, and again, I didn't watch all of it. I watched all Trump. I watched Melania and the family and some others before. I can't remember who the first speaker was that I caught, or the exact order of the lineup. But again, they're misrepresenting what happened there. They're basing it all on one comedian trying to make a joke, an insult comic. I think Marco Rubio had a really good point. We'll talk about it in the next hour, but basically saying that's what insult comics do, and they're not always going to land. I know Greg Gutfeld was getting very upset about it, but it's an easy thing to do, which is to try to silence a comic and to try to suggest what they said is very offensive and then tie it in with the candidate. I mean, they wouldn't do that on the other side of the coin. They wouldn't talk about maybe offensive things a performer or something had said in the past that was playing at a Harris rally. But we know the way the system works, and it's unfortunate. It's biased, just like Jeff Bezos said, or at least a perception of bias. And we have to deal with it for 1 week. For 1 week, it is going to get very bad of all pro-Harris reporting and all negative, even if they can't find it, they'll make it up, negative stories on Trump. So we're going to talk about that in the next hour. Please stay with us. As I said, Ed White will be our guest coming up a little bit later on. And of course, I want to hear from you, the comments from you. Did you vote? What do you think about the Madison Square Garden story? How are you feeling? This is a big question. How are you feeling? 1 month out, 1 month, 1 week out, 1 week out from Election Day. It's hard to believe. Feels like it's got a month, but this week's going to feel like a month. Let's say that for sure. But 1 week out, how are you feeling? All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking with our number 2 after this.
The World Series on WYDC TV Big Fox is brought to you by ServU Credit Union.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer.
How do I know if I have a case?
Call 844-292-6222 and consult with one of our attorneys to find out if the products you used are part of the lawsuit. Your eligibility will also depend on how often you use these hair products and your specific cancer diagnosis. If you regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. Call 844-292-6222.
How much will it cost to talk to an attorney?
There is no fee unless we win your case. Call 844-292-6222 for your free case review.
It's the best 2 hours of NFL coverage, starting with Fox NFL kickoff at 11.
This is great TV.
It is caught! Then at noon, take it to the next level on Fox NFL Sunday.
Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning, and I do appreciate you joining us. As I mentioned, Ed White will be our guest running for New York State Supreme Court in the 7th Judicial District. That's coming up a little bit later on. Did you see yesterday, before we dive into the Madison Square Garden rally, which is coming up exactly next after this story, Biden stood in line to vote. And when he did so, he was just a few back from someone wearing a pro-Trump hat, but it happened to be a very vulgar pro-Trump hat, terms I cannot use. But among the people waiting in line in front of President Biden to vote in Delaware was a man in a profane pro-Donald Trump hat. Just awkward optics there, but this comes after Biden wore the Trump hat, the MAGA hat, not that long ago at that one event. So anyway, so let's talk about Madison Square Garden. The media, politicians are using this as a talking point. Never have I heard Madison Square Garden being so ridiculed, so attacked. Madison Square Garden, arguably the most famous arena in the world. Literally being attacked is you would think the only event they ever had was a Nazi rally back in the 30s. That's not even the same location. That's the old Madison Square Garden. But I'll continue. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, blasted former President Donald Trump's packed event in Madison Square Garden as a, quote, mini January 6th rally. Do you think they've started to use that term too much, that it's so knee-jerk? Does it diminish in their minds, what January 6th was? Because I know they talk about it a lot. Does that, if you compare everything to January 6th, does it diminish it in a way? This was a hate rally, AOC said on Morning Joe. This was not just a presidential rally. This was also not just a campaign rally. I think it's very important for people to understand that these are mini January 6th rallies. These are mini Stop the Steal rallies, she added. These are rallies to prime an electorate into rejecting the results of an election if it doesn't go the way they want. Where does that come from? Just because he held a rally, is that off limits now? I'm really confused about the reaction to this, but I think this is the story that they've wanted for quite some time, where they can mislead, mind you, but mislead you into believing that it was a horrible January 6th, mini January 6th rally. Again, anything that Trump does in this last week is going to be ridiculed, is going to be attacked. So again, I'm not surprised by that, but this was a weird option for that, in my opinion. Yes, you can go after that comedian. That's fair. I didn't think he was particularly funny. I'm not sure who he is. But to tie that into something that a guy at the opening, I don't think he was even in the thick of the speeches. To tie that in with Donald Trump is, I think, outrageous. But depending on what outlet you go to, you would think this is the worst thing that happened in presidential politics, perhaps ever. Him having that rally at Madison Square Garden, which again, it's one of those things, never mind what you see and hear with your own eyes and ears. It's about what the media is telling you, what politicians are telling you. Our governor, Kathy Hochul, who we're going to talk about New York State issues in just a little bit, she said the, quote, hate fest. Yes, the Daily News doesn't even come out and say anything different. They don't say the event, the political event. They just come right out and just refer to it as a hate fest. amounted to, quote, an ugly, divisive, and racist closing message by the Trump campaign. That's our Governor Hochul. Now, some of these people got cut off, but Byron Donalds said to the Daily News, is it a racist rally if a black man from Florida who's originally from New York speaks at the rally? I don't think so. Many people are upset with the painting of this, of what this Madison Square Garden rally was, which again was a rally. TV host Geraldo Rivera, a former friend and political ally of Trump, urged Latino men to vote against the former president. A vote for Trump is a vote against self-respect. And that's where they're going with this. Now, again, that was a comedian. I'm not sure why that is being tied in other than the unfortunate, I guess, decision to put him on what was a 6-hour event. And the story, the media's narrative right now, if you haven't been paying attention, is it's going to cost them in Pennsylvania. The numbers are in already. Somehow they have polls, these accurate polls already saying that Puerto Rican voters are leaving the former president, in droves because of it. But I'll continue with other rhetoric that's being used. Very scary rhetoric when you consider the man holding the rally has had 2 assassination attempts at least against his life. The rhetoric, such as Doug Emhoff, husband to Kamala Harris, said Trump will praise Nazis, quote, behind closed doors. So this is another example of Trump says horrible, horrible things. We can't point to it. So it's always behind closed doors. Or I heard somebody say to somebody else that this is what Trump said. And again, with this idea of anti-Semitism, Van Jones himself, the former Obama advisor, Van Jones said that the Democrat Party is now marbled with anti-Semitic bigotry. And yet they're trying to paint, they're very good at doing this, they're trying to paint this as some type of anti-Semitic rally when that is just not the case. Emhoff chose Pittsburgh as a setting for the address, not only because Pennsylvania is a swing state, but because of the 6th anniversary of the Tree of Life synagogue shooting, in which 11 Jews were killed in the largest mass murder against Jews in the history of the United States. Emhoff also referred to the shooting of an Orthodox Jew in Chicago on Sunday who was wounded by a man apparently illegally in the country who was shouting Allahu Akbar. Reading from a teleprompter, Emhoff began by claiming that Trump, quote, unhinged and just un-American view of our fellow Americans. He continued by condemning what he called the anti-Semitic and racist speeches at Trump's rally in Madison Square Garden. He did not quote any. There were, in fact, no such speeches, only jokes told by a comedian at the start of the 6-hour event, which was well attended by Jews and Americans of all races. The second gentleman also warned that Trump would, quote, praise Nazis behind closed doors, again offering no evidence. And again, I guess this is to ignore what we've been seeing on college campuses and in the streets now since October 7th. It's very frustrating, this coverage, but I don't think any of you are surprised by it. Obviously, as we are 7 days out, excuse me, I keep getting the dates wrong. 1 week out from November 5th, I combined the 5th part of it, that this is going to be the sort of coverage that we'll see. Obama was seizing on what the comedian said. It started the whole program, a 6-hour program. And that is what he has seized onto. Obama said, so the man Trump holds this big rally in Madison Square Garden. And the warm-up speakers were were trotting out and peddling the most racist, sexist, bigoted stereotypes. One guy called Puerto Rico, quote, an island of garbage. Trump's rally Sunday night featured opening remarks from comedian and podcast host Tony Hinchcliffe. And that's what they're referring to. Now, these are fellow citizens he's talking about here in Philadelphia. They are our neighbors. They are our friends. They are our coworkers. Their kids go to school with our kids. These are Americans. About 500,000 Puerto Ricans live in battleground Pennsylvania, where Obama held his rally on Monday. We have to reject the kind of politics and division and hatred that we saw represented. America is ready to turn the page. Now, Trump's campaign has distanced itself from the comedian's comments, along with several Republican lawmakers, but not before they were seized upon by the Harris campaign and the likes of Puerto Rican superstar Bad Bunny, who signaled his support for the vice president's candidacy. Well, look at some of the headlines. How about this? The Daily Beast. Opinion. Donald Trump's racist New York City rally was vile. It was also political suicide. Wow. So it's all over. The race is essentially all over. To all those Republicans who shed crocodile tears because their feelings were so hurt that people were calling Donald Trump a fascist, stop. To all the MAGA defenders who who said it was over the top to compare Trump's Madison Square Garden rally to that held by the German American Bund and an early incarnation of Madison Square Garden? Shush. This is how the author decides to write this piece. To all those who were falling once again for the bought and paid for narrative that Trump somehow had the momentum going into the final week of the campaign of 2024, nope. On Sunday at Madison Square Garden, Donald Trump engineered will be seen by political analysts and later by historians as the coup de grace that killed forever his prospects of being president and may well have yet set him up on a post-election course on which he finally may be held accountable for his actions. Wow, there's a lot to dissect here, isn't there? The rally concluded disjointed, incoherent, and yet clearly vile speech by the former president. It might have been touted by Trump's son, Don Jr., one of the former president's warm-up acts, as the king of New York returning to reclaim his crown. But Trump was never the king of New York. Trump has always been loathed in New York City, especially in his former home borough of Manhattan, where the vote against him was and will be dependably over 80%. But if he was hated before, rest assured he will be more despised after tonight. That was clear early on when Tony Hinchcliffe, a man invited by Trump to give one of the introductory speeches, who in true MAGA fashion alleged without providing a shred of evidence that he was a comedian, offered a KKK buffet of nauseating slurs. I'm not going to go through everything that he said just because I think you've seen it all. You might think that a few super racist comments from one speaker might not warrant comments that compared the Trump rally to the Nazi meeting 85 years ago. No, I would think quite the opposite. I think the media was looking for something like that, and I think they got what they wanted. So no, this guy was enough, of course. But his comments were hardly the worst, and the racism and the hate and incitement to violence and the promise of an increasingly authoritarian state continued. One speaker said that Harris, well, I don't want to go through some of these quotes because I don't want to fall into that trap. But Giuliani spoke. I did not see that. Former Trump aide Stephen Miller, as is his habit, went directly for the Nazi playbook, saying America is for Americans and Americans only. Tucker Carlson came out to offer more racist slurs about Harris. Hulk Hogan ripped his shirt off while declaring he saw no Nazis in the audience, thus proving that steroid abuse can not only can go after your eyesight as well. Elon Musk was there acting strangely and promising to slash the size of the government, except presumably the parts that are subsidizing his businesses. Yeah, this is quite a piece, isn't it? Do you agree with what the Daily Beast has to say that this was political suicide? I don't want to go through all 7 pages of this, but it's their normal hyperbole. It's their normal attacks. Trump may be thinking the rally will help him mobilize thugs to violence when he contests his loss, and we should be weary of that. But he has provided, on the eve of the election, the best case why he must be defeated that has ever been presented. In the end, because what unfolds was so foul and so offensive and threatening to so many of us, I believe that is why we will someday conclude that for all intents and purposes, Trump's final political act occurred on the biggest stage in America's biggest city, a couple of blocks from Broadway. So that's David Rothkopf, for what it's worth, giving you all sides this morning. Were you surprised by the rally being the narrative for, I think it's going to be for the whole week? I mean, again, I didn't see all the opening speakers. That's why some of this surprised me with that comedian. But the parts with his family, and they need something. And I think this is grasping at straws, but they are effective with controlling the narrative. Now, Axios says that they believe the media has lost control of the narrative. I think if you see what Jeff Bezos was saying about the non-endorsement, he was saying similar. But this is what the media is going to do for the next week. So prepare yourself. And again, I asked the question, how do you feel 1 week out? What did you think of the rally, if you watched it, if you didn't, or what the media is saying? And also, if you early voted, I want to hear from you. We've got one more segment. We're going to tell you what Marco Rubio had to say about the comedian at the Madison Square Garden rally. And then after that, we'll be talking to Ed White. Ed White is running for New York State Supreme Court in the 7th Judicial District. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back.
Brian Maggs, a trusted leader and Army veteran. In 16 years of prosecuting and supervising family court cases, Brian has fought for the well-being of families and children. He respects and supports our constitutional rights. He's committed to our community, and he's dedicated to justice. Brian is a devoted husband and father of 4 daughters who believes that supported families build strong communities. For Family Court Judge, vote Brian Maggs.
The World Series on WYDC TV Big Fox is brought to you by ServU Credit Union.
Y'all got a lot of stuff here in your water.
You're never gonna believe it, but this can filter up to 60 different contaminants from your water.
It's all about cleaner drinking water.
Dude, that's good water.
And that's good water.
Now that's good water.
That's good water, eh?
No matter where you live, there's a Culligan water expert nearby. At Culligan, we think about your water, so you don't have to.
Call today to schedule your free water test.
How many times you tried to clean a stubborn mess but end up with no success? What you need is the all-new waterproof Ruby Horsepower, the new cordless and rechargeable power scrubber that cleans faster and easier, guaranteed. Watch, baked on oven grease is no match. It blasts away dirt and grime in no time. The power comes from our rotating brushes, spinning at 350 RPM. The incredible torque fights calcium, mildew, mold, and more. Take it in the kitchen, where it busts through caked-on crud, or outside and tackle tough tasks with ease. Get your Ruby Horsepower with 4 additional attachments, all for just $39.99. Great news! They're in stock and ready to ship. Due to high demand, only 2 per order. Order now.
Call 1-800-980-2344. That's 1-800-980-2344, or visit horsepowerscrubber.com. So call 1-800-980-2344 now.
Fox College Football Friday and Big Noon Saturday kick off a whole new era of college football with new matchups, historic rivalries, and all of the Big 10, Big 12, and Mountain West action. This is the season we've all been waiting for. College football on.
The Boss Security Roof Cam. Boss Security and Horseheads, contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back. What a beautiful view of Corning right there. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. Broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning, hence the roof cam view. Let's go through some viewer comments, shall we? What happened to all the Trump lawfare? Did it just disappear, moved on to the next thing to tear him down? No, a lot of the decisions, well, that immunity case by the Supreme Court changed some things up there. Jack Smith's still trying to release that info, even though he shouldn't have, to try to play a spoiler in the election. But no, that's far from over. A lot of it will happen, potentially, the decisions anyway, after the election. A different comment here from a different viewer. Good morning. Hey, good morning. Regarding the rally, the Madison Square Garden rally that we've been talking about. So is the media insinuating that the people who attended the rally are Nazis? Yes, they are. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But before that, Marco Rubio responded to the comedian Tony Hinchcliffe's Puerto Rico joke. He said, Puerto Rico isn't garbage. It's home to fellow American citizens who have made tremendous contributions to our country. I understand why some people were offended by a comedian's jokes last night, but those weren't Trump's words. They were jokes by an insult comic who offends virtually everyone all the time, because that is what insult comedians do. The joke was rebuked by several Democrats, including Tim Walz, and some Republicans as well. Rubio, however, argued that Harris's record as vice president should be more of concern to the media than Hinchcliffe's attempt at humor. What isn't a joke is how Kamala Harris destroyed our economy and allowed dangerous criminals to illegally enter our country and terrorize, rape, and murder Americans. And what isn't a joke and truly outrageous is how journalists are helping Kamala Harris's with her dangerous campaign of hate by calling Trump the new Hitler, and how MSNBC used old footage of Nazi rallies to smear Trump supporters as Nazis. That was MSNBC comparing Trump's event with the infamous 1930s Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden, a different Madison Square Garden, by the way. Hinchcliffe reportedly workshopped his joke at the New York City Comedy Club that night before Trump's rally. The comedian has refused to apologize, saying, "These people have no sense of humor. I made fun of everyone, watched the whole set. Yeah, insult comics only play anymore is if, and I don't even know if you consider him an insult comic, but if you're insulting, if you're like someone like Stephen Colbert, that you've got an audience of like-minded people and you just go out there and badmouth Trump and call him the orange bad man, then you're okay. But yeah, that's what they're focusing laser-like on is this comedian. But to that viewer's point, and Kristen Fleming's had the same point, anyone at Trump's Madison Square Garden rally could see there were no Nazis, just ordinary Americans ready for positive change. So we're going to talk about that as well. A couple of other things. Piers Morgan really calling out the media for their hysteria over this rally. But remember, with a week out, this is where their focus is going to be. This is what the media needs to do. It comes as no surprise, with just because they're trying to take away that momentum of Trump. So what they're saying is, with just days away, Trump is now forced to defend. After having the momentum, is forced to defend that Madison Square Garden rally. And I'm sure you've seen headlines like that all morning long. I'm sure you've seen reporters all over talk about it. Again, it's not a surprise, but I think to those that watched Trump's speech and some of the speeches before, I don't think many of you, but maybe watched all 6 hours. But for those that watched some of it, like I did, this turn, I thought the whole Nazi rally comparison would be over with after the event was held, but they've just doubled and tripled down and are trying to make it sound as if it's akin to that rally in the 1930s, which it was nothing like that. So it's another example of never mind what you saw with your eyes, hear with your ears. But they're hoping that the people, especially in the swing states, aren't paying attention, that they didn't watch the rally, that they can just watch a few little clips that they cut up on the mainstream media and play, and that'll do it. That'll be representative of all 6 hours of the rally. But we got to take a short break because we have Ed White. He's running for New York State Supreme Court. He's coming up next, so stay with us. This is, Frankly Speaking, here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
Have you been unable to work for over a year due to a mental or physical disability?
Were you recently denied Social Security disability benefits? Great news. You may be eligible for money, back pay, relief.
If you've been pre-qualified and diagnosed with a recognized condition that prohibits you from working, our lawyers can file a claim to get your disability benefit.
Call us today and find out more.
Call now, 844-617-0440.
Isn't this important? Don't you want more energy? Now's the best time to make every day better and relieve those achy muscles and pains than with the Hesselson's Hot Tub. Hesselson's has hot tubs in stock and available for immediate delivery with unbelievable savings. Hesselson's offers 0% interest-free financing for up to 5 full years. Hesselson's carries the only hot tub brand in the industry with the exclusive freshwater salt system that is eco-friendly and easy to use and only enhances your hot tubbing experience. Come in today and see why your next hot tub should be a Hesselson's hot tub. And remember, it's always fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Now there's a product that sears food, stirs it, even shreds it for you. Introducing the PowerXL StirMax Multi-Cooker with a built-in auto stirrer that gives you the freedom of adding your ingredients and walking away and coming back to meals that cook up to 60% faster. No more stirring food. StirMax technology automatically rotates the paddle clockwise, then counterclockwise, so it stirs it for you. Powerful enough to even shred food. Then the 7.5 quart pot goes right to the table to serve. With a premium ceramic coating, nothing sticks. And it's dishwasher safe. Now you can try the PowerXL StirMax Multi-Cooker with lid and recipe guide in your home for 30 days for just $14.99. You also get the steamer and rice basket for healthy meals, StirMax serving spoon that snaps in place for easy serving, and $100 in free grocery coupons. We'll even ship your order all absolutely free. This is an exclusive TV-only offer, so order now.
Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio. And joining me in the Zoom version of that studio this morning, Ed White, candidate for New York State Supreme Court Justice. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Frank, for having me. I'm looking forward to the interview.
Of course, and it was such a pleasure meeting you at the Scope Dinner. How great is that Scope Dinner?
Oh, that Scope Dinner is one of the best. As a Scope member, I try to attend Scope meetings as well as the functions that they have. I think it's very important. Our Bill of Rights, Second Amendment, that right is very important, as well as the Constitution and all the Bill of Rights for that matter.
Of course. And have you seen a more active group than Scope? Boy, those guys are dedicated, aren't they?
Wow. They are definitely workers, and they are very dedicated to their cause.
Yeah.
Or our cause, we should say.
Yeah, I like that. That sounds much better. So, like I said, kind of the disclaimer that I always give when I have someone running for judge, and that is I can't ask really specific questions. So we start with the easy one. Tell us a little bit about your background.
So I was born and raised in Seneca County. I'm a Seneca County resident. Been a very hard worker. I grew up, I say rural poor. Many of us know that coming from, the smaller counties. And when I was old enough, I started working, worked on some farms, worked in an equipment dealership. One thing I'm proud of is I went to Cayuga Community College. In fact, if I win this race, I will be the first Cayuga Community College graduate to be a Supreme Court Justice in the 7th District. People kind of, there's a lot of people out there that don't believe you can be competitive with the community college education, but I'm proof of that.
That's right.
So I really appreciate my humble beginnings.
Yeah, and it's probably with that. And then, well, let's get into your experience for this position too, because you've got your beginning, your background. But what kind of experience do you have that makes you believe that you would be the best New York State Supreme Court Justice?
Wow, experience. I've been in the Supreme Court for 28 years as an attorney, law clerk, principal law clerk to multiple judges. In fact, Judge Ark, who was a 7th District judge, when he retired a year ago this past summer, I say, kind of coming out of it now, I'm now, out of all the attorneys and judges, the senior member in the Supreme Court. In fact, the closest judge to me is 18 years, and I have 28 years. Just capitalizing on that, too, I've been in every single part of the court. In fact, when I started in the court almost 30 years ago, there was only one part in the Supreme Court, and that was commercial part, and then, the judges pretty much handled the cadre of cases that come before Supreme Court judges. There were a couple of dedicated criminal court judges at the time, but over the years I've been with the court, they've broken up the court into multiple specialty parts, I call them. There's a matrimonial part, there's a foreclosure part, there's criminal parts, a general civil part, commercial part, and at one point there was a medical malpractice part, which I worked in, but now that's been redistributed to the civil court judges.
Wow, that's a lot. 28 years, congratulations. So I was going to ask how you prepare for your role as justice, but that sounds like you might have just answered that one. So for people that don't know, let's talk a little bit about the race itself, just so that they're aware of how to vote and like that. But also, before I lead into that, to kind of segue, you are running for the 7th District. That is Cayuga, Livingston, Monroe, Ontario, Seneca, Steuben, Wayne, and Yates counties. I asked this of everybody in the 7th District. How many miles do you think you put on your car?
Oh, wow. Thousands. Tens of thousands for that matter.
Yeah.
I think I had one day where I think I did, it was Father's Day. I know the day. And I think I put on like 600 miles in one day.
Wow. It's a big district, isn't it?
Huge. 1.3 million people. It is a big district geographically, and a large number of people in that district.
And I want to talk about the campaign, but how do you campaign in a district that big?
You try to schedule a lot of events. You get out there. It's tough to do door to door. You can do a little here and there, but to get out and see that many voters is very difficult. You just travel around the circuit. You try to connect up with your constituency and the groups that are supporting you. So there's a lot of dinners and functions like that, like the Scope you mentioned. I mean, that they had some great events this year, and you try to make it out to them and meet the people.
So let's talk about the voting itself first. Just so people are aware, how is this going to work when they go either early voting or day of voting?
Okay, so for the Supreme Court 7th Judicial District, there are 2 spots, so you get to vote for 2 candidates. There are 4 people running for those 2 spots.
Okay. And it's 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. I mean, they're on other lines too, but if we're just focusing on the main party, right, there's 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans?
That is correct. The Democrats have the Working Family Party line, and the Republicans, both of us, have the Conservative Party line as well as the Republican line.
So when this position came up, what led you to make that decision? Because it's not an easy decision. You know how much time and dedication it's going to take, not just the campaigning, but the job itself. Why did you decide to run?
Took a lot of soul searching, but talking to colleagues and friends and attorneys, it seemed like a natural progression for me to become a judge with my background. I think I have a lot of support in the legal community in regard to that, since I've been around so long, and a lot of attorneys supported me making that decision. So it was pretty easy in the end. I did know the commitment because I ran Judge Alex Renzi's re-election campaign last year, and I worked for Judge Renzi. So I certainly am not shy to the campaigning. I love getting out, meeting the people throughout the district. There are some awesome people out there, and just some real Americans.
And I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask how the campaign's going, because I know, like you said, you go to these festivals, and I've said this a million times on this program, but you really get that one-on-one with people and realize issues that you may not have realized were even issues, right? They'll tell you something, and wow, that's so eye-opening. So what are voters saying to you?
It's interesting. No matter the background of the voter, I find that, and I can't get into discussing the issues. I'll just factually state, I find people, they're definitely concerned about public safety. Yeah. They're definitely concerned about the economy. And most are concerned about the issues with the border. I mean, it's amazing, no matter their backgrounds, their beliefs, their understandings, etc. Everybody seems to have the same concern going into this election cycle.
It really is, and it doesn't matter what candidate we have on. Those are the 3 talking points, right? At whatever level, it's really kind of fascinating. So, how's the campaigning been going? Been a lot of fun?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. Towards the end, you kind of get a little tired, but things are good. I have great reception out there. I've met a lot of great people. I've reconnected with a lot of great people, so I've been enjoying every minute of it.
And you say it is tiring. Of course it is. I'm not even running, and it's tiring. So what's your November 6th going to look like?
Well, I have a campaign breakfast in the morning, and then after that, I'll probably try to get around and get some voters out, make sure they
on
get
5th,
to the polls.
On the 5th. I meant on the 6th. Are you going to sleep in? On the 5th, everybody get out and vote. You're thinking about the 5th because you're running.
You know what? The tough part is that's one of the tough parts about campaigning is I work a full-time job. Yeah. So I'll get up Wednesday and, head off like I normally do back to work. I mean, it's the difficulty when you work for someone and you're trying to campaign. They're relying on you, so you got to make sure that you're available regardless. It would be different if you're a judge or some other individual who's a supervisor over people, or you're in private practice where you have your own firm. Sometimes things may be a little more easy to schedule.
Right. And that's really interesting, because we're going to be talking with Stacey Romeo, and it's the same thing. You still have your day job. That's why I'm so fascinated how you're even able to campaign as effectively as you've been able to.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. It really is. You hope you have a judge that's understanding that you're working for, and you take the time off. I accumulate a lot of vacation time, so you have to take off the time you have to take off to get the job done.
So much for Disney World this year. You're going to be campaigning, right?
You're right. 2 years in a row.
Yeah, there you go. You know what's interesting to me, because if you're successful, you're essentially going from being very political to not political for 14 years, right? I mean, you can't do anything really at that time. You can't go to these dinners that we're talking about because of the nature of the job. Why do you think, and I don't think this will ever change, but why do you think in New York it is a Republican and Democrat thing when you as a judge are supposed to be completely impartial for 14 years?
Well, it's not, this question came up in another interview. It's not as political as people like to make it seem.
Right.
I say that even in an appointment system, there's politics in appointments.
That's true.
For all the judgeships in New York State, in fact, you don't need a Wilson Pakula, which is permission to run. You can run in any party you want to run in as a judicial candidate. You just have to get your feet on the ground, get out, get the signatures, circulate the petitions. much like Supreme Court. I mean, if I wanted to run on another party, I could simply, well, it's not so simple, but I could take and run delegates. We are selected by delegates. So, you know, for Republicans and conservatives, working families, and the Democrats, what happens is during the primary season, names are submitted and these individuals run as delegates. Any individual that's a candidate or wants to be a candidate could go out and select people or ask people to be a delegate, run their delegates, and then at the convention, you get your name voted in and away you go. So, you know, it's less political than people want to make it seem that it's fully political and you know, each side is supported by only one philosophy or idea. That's not the case.
That's a good point. And also, I would just know, as someone that takes out petitions, those petitions are the most confusing for the delegates, because they'll go, why am I signing for 30 people here? What am I doing? And then you have to explain the whole process. So it's a unique way of doing things. So if you're looking ahead and you are elected to New York State Supreme Court, what do you think the biggest issues will be that you'll face?
Well, you know, I've been in the courts for so long, and the same issue when I started in the courts almost 30 years ago is the same issue today. And you know, you know, there's a saying, justice delayed is justice denied. The courts are backed up, you know, both criminal and civil. So I think that's something that I've dealt with over the years and will continue to deal with, trying, you know, if I'm fortunate and get elected, trying to deal with case backlog and moving cases along, getting them to the point of either resolution or trial. I think that's very important. We have things called standard and goals in all parts of the court, and I think, you know, you need to effectively manage your calendar. And you know, I saw an increase, you know, post-COVID.
Yeah.
So, you know, certainly those numbers have increased from what they were before COVID. So that's, I think, the biggest factor you're going to deal with.
And that's interesting. Has the courts adapted, or maybe that's not the right word, but since COVID, how have they made up for that backlog? Are they still dealing with that?
Yes, we are.
Oh my gosh.
I think it'll be years. You know, there's different ideas. In fact, you know, statewide, they've added judgeships to deal with some of the backlog. In fact, Hugo County, they have a family court race this year. It was an added judgeship. You know, so they're looking throughout the state and trying to figure out where judges are needed and putting judges there. I mean, it's just getting to the grind and getting the cases done.
Now, and we just have a couple more questions here. I did want to ask, because I saw this the other day, and I guess congratulate you. This is always a weird way of bringing it up, but you got some major endorsements.
Yeah, I have strong law enforcement endorsements. You know, I think part of the reason I was a former probation officer, so I do have a law enforcement background. You know, and I think that was one factor, but you know, certainly appreciate all the support from the law enforcement unions. I also have the UAW and the Teamsters unions that also have endorsed me, and very proud of those endorsements too.
That's unique. I mean, when you have a Republican, I know things have changed a little bit this year, but to have the Teamsters, that's got to feel good.
Yeah, it feels great. I mean, I'm really appreciative. In fact, they had their big clam bake last week, and I spent some time with the members, had a great time.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, so before we go, is there a place to find out more if I didn't ask all the right questions?
Ed White for SupremeCourt.com.
Okay, Ed White for SupremeCourt.com. That's the 7th Judicial District. Again, that makes up Cayuga, Livingston, Monroe, Ontario, Seneca, Steuben, Wayne, and Yates County. In closing, what would you say to voters before they either early vote or head to the voting booth?
You know, I would urge voters to get out and vote. Exercise your rights as an American. Get out and vote. Please get out and vote. I would ask you for your support for myself. But I would say, you know, the important thing is getting out to vote.
Well, Ed, thanks so much for being on the program. It was a pleasure talking with you. It was good seeing you at Scope, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Frank. Really appreciate you taking the time with me this morning.
Of course. Best of luck. We're rooting for you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be right back. But frankly speaking, stay with us.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
When we have the food we need, we are at our best. We push further. We rise higher. We unlock our full potential. When we have the food we need, we make our communities stronger. Together, we can help everyone get the food they need to thrive. Join the movement to end hunger at feedingamerica.org/act now. When we have the food we need, we are at our best. We push further. We rise higher. We unlock our full potential. When we are at our best, we have more to offer the world around us. When we have the food we need, we make our communities stronger. Together, we can help everyone get the food they need to thrive. Join the movement to end hunger at feedingamerica.org/act now.
I'm Nancy O'Dell. This is Crime Expose.
It's chilling, it's haunting.
We knew exactly who it was.
Blood stains on her shorts.
See you in September.
Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We thank them for being the sponsor of our beautiful roof cam. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you to our guest, Ed White, running for New York State Supreme Court in the 7th Judicial District. A couple of comments. And this is a good point. You should explain Prop 1 all week so people won't know. Let me do this just because I'm running No, I think I have time. I do want to talk more about the rally. Because there is, as one viewer said, they don't seem to realize that they're calling anybody that supports Trump a Nazi. That's over half the population of the United States. I do believe they realize that, actually, and I don't think it is a concern of theirs. But since a viewer wants to bring up Proposition 1, this is a perfect segue. Now, on Monday, we will be talking with Bobby Ann Cox about Proposition 1, but State Senator Tom O'Mara, George Borrello, Pam Helming, and Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, Assemblywoman Marjorie Burns, Assemblyman Chris Friend, and Assemblyman Joe Giglio released a guest column this week about Proposition 1, and it's called Vote No on Proposition 1. Now, that's a headline. Get right to the point. There's a dangerous constitutional amendment on the ballot this coming election day that, in our opinion, is cause for significant concern. The amendment, commonly known as Proposal 1, Prop 1, or Proposition 1, will appear on the backside of your ballot. We have serious concerns about it and urge a vote of no. The Wall Street Journal editorial board opined on this proposal on October 5th, quote, "When the government gets in the business of making new rights, it pays to look out for the ones you already have." New York Democrats are pushing a November ballot measure known as Prop 1 to create new protected classes in the state constitution. The amendment is an attempt to drive Democrat turnout and it's a threat to other freedoms. Prop 1 has been described as both a Trojan horse and a wolf in sheep's clothing. We believe that the inclusion of gender expression and gender identity as protected classes in Prop 1 will first and foremost constitutionally protect biological boys and males who identify or express themselves as female to participate in girls' and women's sports. We wholeheartedly oppose this, as it will be the end of girls' and women's sports as we know it today. Separate women's sports were hard fought for and have been protected by federal law for more than 50 years through Title IX of the Educational Amendments of 1972. Biological boys could take limited spots on girls' teams and even potential college scholarships. The amendment replaces his or her with their. If approved, Prop 1 will provide biological males expressing or identifying as female a constitutional right to use women's safe spaces such as bathrooms, locker rooms, and showers. As well, it may erode parental rights by possibly removing parental consent from health care decisions impacting their children. Specifically, Prop 1 adds gender identity, gender expression, and age, covering all persons including minors. These new constitutional rights will grant minor children the right to medical procedures such as puberty blockers to change gender, all without parental notification or consent. Under current law, a student can't get Tylenol from the school nurse or go to a tanning salon without parental consent, and can't get a tattoo even with parental consent. Further, by establishing national origin as a protected class, it will allow illegal immigrants to claim the same rights as all legal New York citizens, including the right for non-citizens to vote. It will implement a constitutional basis for state tax dollars to be used to provide direct cash benefits and other support for non-citizens and illegal migrants. Recall that just a couple of years ago, New York City passed a law allowing non-citizens to vote. The courts have thus far struck that down. But would they do so under this proposal? Even if they could, would they do so given the increasingly uber-liberal tenor of our state's highest courts today, which would be bolstered by this proposal? Remember that the state legislators, radical New York City-dominated Democrat majorities, conjured up this proposal. The amendment in its entirety, as was approved by the Albany Democrats, and I'm not going to go through the whole in its entire, we've already summarized it, we've already mentioned it, and they summarize it on the ballot. That's what to keep in mind, where it's a yes vote puts those protections in the New York State Constitution, a no vote leaves these protections out of the state Constitution. The Democrat state legislative majorities and Governor Hochul have touted the proposal as an equal rights amendment designed solely to protect abortion rights in New York State. They are desperate to keep abortion as a campaign issue because they have absolutely nothing else to campaign on, and they know that 2/3 of New Yorkers support access to abortion. However, neither the full text of the Proposition 1 amendment nor the summary of the proposal mentions abortion specifically. Why not? If that is their stated main objective. Nicole Gelinas of the Manhattan Institute, in a recent commentary published in the New York Post, wrote the following on Prop 1 being touted as a straight-up abortion rights amendment. Quote, Hochul and state lawmakers could have asked voters to agree to a similar free exercise of access to abortion amendment, and it would pass. 2/3 of New York voters support abortion access. Instead, Hochul allowed lawmakers to cynically use the abortion issue to sneak all sorts of other stuff into the amendment, which doesn't even mention abortion, end quote. Beware that this Trojan horse of a so-called equal rights amendment is truly a wolf in sheep's clothing. Remember to turn your ballot over and join us in voting no on Proposal 1. So thank you to the senators and the assemblymen and women for that guest column. So there is your, I guess, update on Prop 1. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us.
Trick or treat time is here, and Big Fox TV has some tips to keep our kids safe. Wear bright, reflective, flame-resistant costumes and remove any tripping hazards. Travel in groups and review traffic safety. Check outdoor lights and carry a flashlight. Never go into a house or car for candy, and let your parents check your treats. This reminder is brought to you by your caring friends at Tom's South Corning Collision, Cutler's Carpet and Flooring, Shedden's Wholesale, Suburban Propane, and Big Fox TV.
Lease a brand new 2024 Subaru Crosstrek Limited all-wheel drive featuring power move and heated seats for only $369 a month for 36 months. Make car buying simple. Drive your deal at Simmons Rockwell Subaru in Big Flats.
Frankly Speaking Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs.
Wow, you found it.
I did.
The History of Water Part 6? I've been dying to read this.
I know, honey.
I always wanted that book.
At Culligan, we get that most people don't think about water like we do, and that's okay. You see, when we install one of our high-efficiency water softeners, we're thinking about hard water and lime scale buildup, so you can just think about longer-lasting appliances and softer skin and hair. At Culligan, we think about your water, so you don't have to.
Call today to schedule your free water test.
the Boss Security Roof Cam. Contact Boss Security in Horseheads today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. A comment from a viewer from Fred. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. The current plan is for the family to travel to Corning to cast our votes and then have lunch at one of the fine choices on Market Street. Well, that's great. Yes, it is at the Corning Library, is one of the places, if you are a Steuben County resident, where you can vote early. Also the Board of Elections, and I believe there is a place, I know there's a place, but I think it's Arts Council, but it's in Hornell. But I think that's a smart choice. I will be voting there at some point as well. Continuing, for all the fuss about Hitler in Madison Square Garden, Hillary didn't mind it when her husband accepted her party's nomination in that building. Yes, it has a history. I mean, Madison Square Garden before Sunday was considered one of the most historic arenas. It was something that's, always been praised. And now, boy, you think it was the worst building in the world. If not for that day, we might have never heard of the Arkansas governor's wife. We'll have a first female president when a deserving woman earns a party nomination, not when a woman rides her husband's coattails in the case of Hillary or does whatever Harris has done to get where she is. Sunday was the best Trump rally yet in the heart of blue New York City. That is why he has set the Dems' hair on fire. Thank you, Fred. Appreciate that. Just since we were talking about New York real quick, and then we're going to get back into Madison Square Garden, we were talking about Proposition 1 and specifically O'Mara, Palmisano, Friend, all calling for you to vote no. Just to kind of tie these two together in a weird way, New York State leads the country again when it comes to driving out citizens. 2023 saw nearly 1% of the population leave. That's more than 180,000 people. That's the biggest chunk of any state population. Yes, this number is better than the 2022 figure, which saw a new out-migration of more than 244,000. But New York's been losing residents for a long time, and the latest figures show that the COVID-era hemorrhaging isn't stopping. And also that it wasn't solely due to the state's insane, draconian, and useless pandemic policies that shuttered schools and wrecked businesses. Those are gone. So what's driving people out of New York? Start with crime. It's rampant in New York State, despite Governor Hochul's junk statistic bid to deny it. Look no further than the case of Monique Fort, who robbed a little boy and assaulted his mom in the Bronx. Despite 14 previous arrests, a judge let her go, virtually guaranteeing she'll go on to seriously harm or murder someone. Then there's the migrant crisis. Hundreds of thousands of migrants have flowed into the state thanks to the Harris-Biden border disaster, presenting a fiscal nightmare and a tidal wave of social problems. But the progressives in charge of the state and local government refuse to take any meaningful action. What are Empire State leftists spending their time on? Making sure that Gothamites get time off from work to mourn their pets. We brought that up last week. At least if a bill from ultra-left city councilman Sean Abreu becomes a law. And waging a war on cars, like Emily Gallagher, Socialist Assembly member, all the while racking up traffic tickets for running red lights and illegal parking. New York electeds have gone far beyond simply being indifferent to the public's needs and wants. They're fully in open contempt territory now. And guess what? New Yorkers all over the state are taking the hint and hitting the road. And you look at something like Prop 1 that will drive more people out. Now, we've got to take our last break and wrap up today's edition of Frankly Speaking, so stay with us. We will be right back.
If you or a loved one regularly used hair relaxers or straighteners and were diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, you may be entitled to significant financial compensation.
I've used hair relaxers for years. I had no idea they could cause cancer.
Chemical hair relaxers and straighteners have been linked to serious conditions, including several types of cancer. If you used hair relaxers and have been diagnosed with uterine, ovarian, or endometrial cancer, call us now. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call today.
Have you heard? ServU Credit Union is dropping their auto loan rates with the new buy or refi special. Right now, get an auto loan at 4.99% APR for 72 months. Whether you're buying a new vehicle or looking to refinance your current loan from another lender, ServU's low rates are available to all members, regardless of credit score. Apply online, over the phone, or in person, and drive off with confidence. ServU Credit Union, here to make your borrowing experience safe, easy, and affordable.
Name something with a diamond in it.
Diamondback rattlesnake.
It's in the name. Name a low-calorie food you might make your edible underwear out of.
Salmon.
Watch it weeknights. Share it the next day.
Wild caught. Norwegian teriyaki.
Sharing the fun. Weeknights on Family Feud.
7 and 7:30 on Big Fox.
The Boss Security Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Quick comment from Ken on Proposal 1 or literally any other issue. You know the Dems are lying to us because you can hear them talking. And also don't forget that the governor flat out stated that they don't want the likes of us in New York. That's true, just like her predecessor. Andrew Cuomo said similar. Kristen Fleming said anyone at Trump's Madison Square Garden rally could see that there were no Nazis, just ordinary Americans ready for positive change. So if you can't beat them, you smear them, and anyone who is voting for them. That's the prevailing motto of the panicked Democrats who are projecting Trump's Madison Square Garden rally through some evil Nazi funhouse mirror. During its coverage of the event, MSNBC gratuitously spliced in disgusting footage of the 1939 Nazi rally that took place in Madison Square Garden. AOC called it a mini January 6th rally, and Tim Walz said there is a direct parallel to that and the 1939 rally. These are diluted dispatches from their couches. I know because I covered the event from both outside and inside the world's most famous arena. Again, this is Kristen Fleming. The Hitler fever dream was no surprise. When the rally was announced, New York State Senator Brad Holman Siegel shamelessly tweeted the gathering was a disastrous decision by Madison Square Garden that will endanger the public safety of New Yorkers and has the potential to incite widespread violence. He demanded the garden cancel to keep our city safe. Safe from whom? He didn't say, but the implication was clear. Republican and Trump voters were violent thugs. I'd never been to a political rally, and while I lean right, I don't consider myself MAGA, she says. So she covered this and realized that this is all a lie, this narrative, and they're hoping that you didn't watch the rally. They're hoping that you weren't paying attention. All these so-called deplorables, some from as far away as Florida and other recent Democrat defectors, waited patiently in line for more than 4 hours in tight quarters. Everyone was polite, considerate, and patient. No one complained. I've been on rowdier lines at Chipotle. And she goes and just talks about her time there and the fun that she had. But to quote the Hulkster, I don't see no stinking Nazis here. Just passionate, peaceful, mostly middle-class people hoping for a better way of life for themselves and their families. People the Democrats used to welcome with open arms. Piers Morgan went as far as to call MSNBC scum of the earth because of that cutting in of the footage from the Nazi rallies. And now they're MSNBC facing backlash from Jewish Trump supporters after that comparison. Axios did admit, I know I'm moving fast, Axios' Jim Vandhei and Mike Allen acknowledged Monday that the establishment media's control over framing the election narrative is shattered. The media's dominance in narrative and reality shaping in presidential elections shattered in 2024 due to the rise of alternative media and the era of new technology, streaming services, podcasts, and the liberated platform of X, they said. All right. Oh, by the way, Media Research Center put together the numbers. Coverage of Trump and Harris in the presidential race, most lopsided in history, 85% negative coverage for Trump. And that goes back to what Jeff Bezos was saying about not doing an endorsement. The bias is why people are not trusting any longer. But we are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you to Ed White for joining us. Well, thank you to all of you who joined us as well. Ed White running for New York State Supreme Court in the 7th Judicial District. We appreciate him being on the program. Tomorrow on the program, we'll be talking with Stacey Romeo, who's also running for New York State Supreme Court in the 7th Judicial District. And then on Thursday, we'll be talking to former congressman and current candidate for Assembly, and also he is currently the chairman of the Steuben County Republican Party. Joe Sempolinski will be joining us on Thursday. Friday, Matt Bozzetti, who is running for Chemung County Family Court, will join us in the 6 o'clock hour. And then in the 7 o'clock hour, we'll hear from Matt McCarthy, who is running for Steuben County Court Judge and Family Court Judge. So Matt McCarthy, who's acting in those positions right now, he is running for those positions on the 5th. And then on Monday, we'll be talking to Bobby Ann Cox about Proposition 1, which is on the back of your ballot. That does it for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you personally for joining us, all the great comments and all the even last-minute waves there. I do appreciate it. I hope that you'll join us every weekday morning starting at 6 for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox, we will see you tomorrow morning bright and early. I look forward to it already.